Perfect. Hi, Carly.
Hi.
So we're about, Maya is going to head off, so it'll just be me and you unless Natalie joins us. So I did want to give you a heads up, so I'm not sure if Natalie will be coming back right away. So I actually have some questions that I'm going to pose to you, so that way whenever they come, if the students want to watch it later, they can.
Good. Hopefully my students will be quiet and respectful during this and maybe even help answer some of these questions.
Oh, geez. Yeah. So, and actually, even if they come up with something that they think wasn't mentioned in the videos that they think would be good to mention, even if it's not a question I ask, I'd love that.
That'd be great.
So I guess we'll go ahead and start with, just because we've been talking about River Raisin a little bit, the area, is River Raisin considered a tributary?
Yes.
Tributary. I would say no, because the River Raisin is the main branch, right? It's the main branch of the watershed that drains right to Lake Erie. But those smaller streams and creeks and mud puddles would still be tributaries, correct?
Okay. Yeah, that was a random question that someone sent us that I figured you'd be the best person to ask that question of. So, kind of jumping into it a little bit more directly. So, have you noticed, or how does urbanization affect water quality in the watershed?
Well, urbanization, you have a lot more pavement, so you can start to find things like polyaromatic hydrocarbons that will show up in your water, and those can potentially cause cancer, lead to other kinds of problems, not only in people, but in wildlife too. So that would be one way. You also tend to get more runoff into the lakes and the streams when you pave an area. Okay. Versus having soil.
Yeah. How can you help clean local water bodies?
There's so many ways you could help clean local water bodies. I know down by Monroe, the students frequently have a competition where it's like an engineering challenge. And I think Saline Middle School does this every year too, where they get to design some kind of system that would actually take the pollution out of the water. So that's one neat way. But of course, helping to pick up any garbage, going to your local cleanups, things like that. And then being mindful of what you put on your lawn as far as different kinds of fertilizers and pesticides go.
Kind of in a similar question, but what are some things that affect water quality? So you mentioned chemicals. Are there other things that can affect water quality, whether it's a river, water, maybe your drinking water, things like that?
All kinds of things can impact water quality, but in our watershed in particular, we're pretty concerned with agriculture, since most of the land area is agricultural. So we want to make sure we're doing those farming practices properly, being careful about when we're spreading manure or fertilizers on our crop plants, and how we deal with animal waste is a big deal too. So even more locally, just doing things like not feeding the geese and the ducks because they can kind of go to the bathroom in the water and increase nutrients.
Maya, did you have a question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I think this is going to be my one question before I hop off of the call, but I had a question that has two parts. The question is it different for a person who lives on a body of water? So if they live on a lake or a stream, do the activities that they can do to protect water quality differ from somebody who might live landlocked in like an urban neighborhood and they don't actually have direct water access? Can both of those people protect water quality, and how do their activities differ from one another?
Well, everybody can protect water quality because everyone lives in a watershed, but you might have to be a little more careful if you have direct access to that body of water, whereas if you live on land, sometimes you might have things like a wetland, or the soil might help to absorb some more of those nutrients and harmful chemicals before it enters the body of water. But if you live right next to a lake or the river, it can go right in and eventually make its way to Lake Erie.
Gotcha. Thank you. That's my one question. I do have to bow out at this point. So, Carly, thank you so much for coming out today. Brittany, I'm going to leave the rest to you.
All right. Have a great day, Maya.
I'll see y'all later.
So one of my last questions was kind of related to dams. And so how do dams affect water quality, if at all?
I'm surprised you didn't ask Maya this question because I know the Watershed Council is working on taking a dam out. Dams can be both good and bad in some ways. So if you dam an area on the river, it does slow down the movement of water above the dam. And anytime you slow down how fast the water's moving, it gives a chance for some of those chemicals and those nutrients to kind of settle out. But then they do collect in the sediment. So sediments can kind of become contaminated over time. But dams do make it a little harder for things like wildlife to get from place to place, or your fish species. So in general, I know there's a big push to remove dams or make it easier for those wildlife to move, creating things like fish ladders.
Yeah. Well, I guess I would want to open up the possibility for you guys to mention, maybe the students to chime in on stuff about water quality that they think the younger children might want to know or that they should know. Or even maybe what are you learning in class that you think is really interesting that maybe these younger students might want to learn about in the future?
Anybody?
Self-sustaining ecosystems.
Oh yeah, do you want to come forward and talk a little more about that?
Sure.
Does anybody else want to hold this? Because my arm is super tired.
Hello.
Talk about your biospheres. Those pretty
Okay,
cool.
so what I like to do is whenever I go to a lake or any water places, I'll take a jar with me and I put some of the sediment from that area in the bottom and I'll put some plants in there. And then it makes a little ecosystem. Snails, it's amazing of all the little things you can grab in there. I made one a week ago and somehow I got something in there that was like this big in a jar that's only that much longer, you know. It was actually crazy. And snails are in that. It's absolutely wild. I've had one since June and they last and they're awesome.
Anybody else? All right. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else, or if you have your next people, we can let you go.
Well, if you want to chime in a little bit more, that it's still not quite 1 o'clock yet, but
Sure. I know one thing we've been talking about in class is bioremediation. We're gonna do a whole unit on it next week, but that's a way to clean up the water using different living organisms. So we've been growing oyster mushrooms in our classroom to kind of see their life cycle, but they're used a lot to clean up pollution in different areas. And I've done a few projects within the watershed where we've actually put out burlap sacks filled with mycelial spawn to help absorb nutrients. The farmers really like it because they can get mushrooms out of the deal too. It's kind of cool. The second edible crop.
Actually, that does kind of, if you want to expand on that a little bit more, but are there other ways that people in their house or at their school that they can help to clean local water bodies? Things that maybe little things or even big things that you can think of?
Well, I don't know if it would necessarily clean the water, but it makes great compost, is doing vermicomposting. And that's really easy to do in your classroom too, to get a bin with worms and put any food scraps, or even a little bit of paper and things in there to keep the worms nice and happy. And then the worm castings actually make for great fertilizer on your garden, and it's natural.
Wonderful. All right. Well, it is 12:59, so thank you so much, Carly, for joining us.
Thank you.
And if the students end up coming up with any other questions, I will be sure to send them your way.
Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.
Okay, bye.